Okay, my loves. I know there are a lot of you that are out there that are really wondering, how do I even set boundaries anymore? Maybe you didn't grow up with great boundaries. Maybe boundaries weren't really modeled well for you, or maybe you were told that you cannot have boundaries. Maybe you're tired of being gaslighted in your relationships, and you're tired of feeling crazy all the time and guilty for trying to make a difference in your life. If this is you, then I want you to come schedule a call with me. Let's chat about the Unashamed Image Program. The Unashamed Image Program is geared towards you specifically. I am going to be helping you in our next upcoming session of the Unashamed Image. I am personally going to train you how to not feel crazy when someone is gaslighting you, how to be able to stand your ground, to keep your boundaries intact, and to also see through the bull crap. I am also going to be teaching you how to set really confident boundaries that you can really rely on. And I'm going to help you communicate them in a way that really makes sense. Basically, I'm going to help you live a life free of shame and on your terms. If you are ready and you are done feeling all the shame and guilt for trying to set boundaries, if you are not willing to live another moment the way you are right now and in somebody else's shadow, then this is the time to schedule that call with me. It's completely free, no pressure, just love, just support. Go to www.erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. Scroll down the page to where it says, Let's Chat About Working Together. Click on that button and it'll take you to my booking page. If you're ready to live the unashamed life, schedule that call. Let's get you in the Unashamed Image Program, my loves. From my heart to your heart. Bye. Welcome to the other side of the struggle. This is a podcast where we talk about trauma, how to heal it, and then how to take it and use it to unlock your mission and your potential, and to use it to live your very best dream life. When you're dealing with betrayal trauma, it can be hard to know how to heal it, how to stop the pain, and to know what your next steps are to take in your own life. And these are the questions that we try to answer here. Trauma has the ability to rob us of our joy and identity, which is why it's so miserable to experience. But with the right tools and with the right mindset, we can totally reclaim that joy and even use this trauma to strengthen ourselves, so that way trauma does not knock us off of our joy again. Living your dream life should be a non-negotiable, but trauma tends to try to negotiate that with you. And even though trauma is not something that we will completely ever be free of in our life, the pain is negotiable. This is why I created Erin Anderson Betrayal Trauma Coaching and this podcast, is because I want my listeners, I want my clients to live, truly live free from the prison that trauma can put you in. I want you to live on the other side of the struggle. Okay, I want you to stop what you're doing right now for just a minute, and I really want you to hear me out. I want you to go right now to erinanderson.kartra.com/page/heart of gold. There you are going to find a free meditation just for you from me This meditation is amazing. Let me tell you a little bit about what it's going to give you. Okay? Number one, it's going to help boost your confidence. If you are dealing with trauma, then you are most likely dealing with a confidence issue as well. And it's something that you are really, really wanting back. Number two, it is going to help you find security in your situations in your life because it's going to help you gain a sense of self-love and some self-trust. The third thing this is going to give you is an ability to escape the trauma that you're experiencing right now, this very minute, and help you find peace and joy and love and a deep appreciation for you and your experiences. This is going to really help you reconnect with yourself. So, that is very, very, very important when you are dealing with healing from trauma. So, again, I'm going to tell you what that website is that you need to go to. erinanderson.kartra, KARTRA.com/page/heart of gold. Capital HEARTOF, capital GOLD. Go check out this meditation. Please claim it for yourself because it is 100% a gift from me to you to help you heal right now from trauma. All my love. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of the Struggle. We have back with us Kyson, and he's in a studio this time. Last time he was in his car, which ended up being a little interesting for recording and editing.
Yep, happy to be back in my home place.
The home, the space, the energy. It's all good. I thought it was really funny, to have to play
I thought it
around
was
with
a little funny. It was
a little.
it wasn't ideal, but we made it. Made it work.
We did it. The whole, we don't have to be perfect to make things happen, right?
Totally.
And you can hear my daughter in the background today. She is not happy, but it's all good. She'll be fine. All right. So today, my loves, we have Kyson back with us talking about if you're feeling lonely, let's talk about how to create these connections that you desire. And as I was thinking about like podcasting episodes and like getting like inspiration and names down, I was like, this is Kyson's jam. Like, this is the stuff he loves to talk about. And, creating just deeper connections with the people that are in your life, not just healing from porn, but that's literally what healing from porn is too, is like, creating better connections. I'm curious, Kyson, what you think about like when somebody comes to you and they say, what things make us lonely? Like I feel so lonely. I feel so lonely in my life, so lonely in my relationships. What do you feel is like the cause of that? What's the anchors to loneliness?
Yeah, I usually first think of like, what? Like I'll kind of ask this question, like, so why are you feeling lonely? What's the difference between feeling lonely and getting some good alone time? I just like to say that to kind of get the juices flowing. Because interestingly, a lot of those same people are like, man, I wish I could get some alone time, but I can't. Or like, those can like coexist, which is fun. So like that's sort of the like prime the pump question I always have. And then I usually go to something around this topic of, I think the quickest way to feel lonely is to basically abandon yourself or betray yourself,
Yeah.
which is, it's cool because we talked about this earlier today, right? That's like a subject that's been really on my mind lately is like how can you, where am I betraying myself, or where am I not showing up as my true self? And that will lead to little pockets of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so at least for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, but for me, the quickest ways, if your goal was to be lonely, I say that sarcastically, if that was your goal, the quickest way would be to like shut down your desires, just cut them
Mm-hmm.
off, shut down your emotions, and try to tell yourself you shouldn't feel that way.
Shitting on yourself, you're right. Yep.
All the shoulds, and also just like be super critical of your thoughts, like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking this way. Do that all day for a couple days, and like you can create loneliness pretty quickly that way.
Yeah, and I think like also hearing somebody saying, I feel so lonely, I'm also hearing them say, I feel misunderstood. I don't
Mhm.
feel seen. I don't feel connected to people. Like I feel like Cinderella in a sense, right? That I have all these expectations placed on me. But what about me? What about my life? What about the things that I want and desire, right? And there's that word again, desire. And as I hear people saying this, you guys, I teach the 7 pillars of living an unashamed life. You've got intention, the bounce back, the brain obey, play, ownership, the lean into, and the anchor, right? We have all of these things, but each one of them has an antithesis to it as well. For intention, the antithesis is expectation. And that, like living in people's expectations, is something that creates so much loneliness. And why do we do that? Well, we like live to other people's expectations. So that way we might actually feel like they see us at some point. But I have yet to meet a person that has lived their entire life by somebody else's expectations that doesn't feel lonely, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is like the bounce back. The antithesis to the bounce back is actually the victim. Because if you think about like what's in the bounce back, it's actually bouncing back to being yourself, bouncing back to actually claiming truth to who you are, being your true self, your true identity, getting out there and creating love and goodness and kindness and more God, like literally, or more of the highest form of love, right? Getting out there and creating that's who you are. But when you're in victim mode and you're stuck in victim mode, you're constantly thinking things like, why doesn't anybody see me? Why am I not appreciated? Um, I feel so unseen. I said that one again because that is a big one. Like it's really a big one. It's almost like you do everything somebody asks you to do. So you can sit there and you can jump up and down and wave your arms really, really big. So that way, finally, they might acknowledge just a little bit of who you are. But the reason why that feels so lonely is it's actually a type of self betrayal when we live by somebody else's expectations, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel good to ignore who you are and ignore the deepest, most beautiful desires of your heart and this gorgeous human that God has created inside of your chest just so you can get recognized by someone who may or may not ever recognize you. It's
And if
like
you
one of the highest forms of self-betrayal I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you combine, or like if you just to like kind of lay that out in a little equation of sorts, or like a short summary, is like if you're gonna let go of who you are and become someone else so that you can measure up to other people's expectations, the ironic thing is that once they do acknowledge you or say like, oh, I love you so much, the thing is you're not bringing your real self to the situation, so you're not even going to receive that love and acknowledgement fully. It's going to feel like, oh, okay, maybe now I can show them my real self, but that's never going to switch over until you actually just commit to doing it for you,
Yeah.
being
And
yourself.
yeah, because, it's about what you want out of life. You know, it's about like actually creating the things that you want. Now, like I said, everything has an antithesis. As I'm saying that, I can almost hear somebody say, but what if I want to create something really bad? Well, that's not creation, that's actually destruction. That's a very different thing. And each one of the antitheses of those 7 pillars actually have some form of destruction. We're talking creation here. We're talking about like becoming your own best friend, having your own back, you know, being kind and gentle with yourself. A couple episodes ago, I talked about forgiving yourself quickly, you know, but when you're stuck in inner victim and feeling that loneliness and like life just robs you, that there's nothing else but life just sitting there robbing you. I feel like that is our victim, which we really need to listen to, truly. That is our victim getting louder and louder and louder, and there's a reason for it. You know? It's trying to get our attention to something. And I don't know of anything that can placate the inner victim better than I hear you, I see you, I can tell this is what you're trying to tell me, and I appreciate it. Here's the truth. You know what I mean? So how do you feel about boundaries? It's a legitimate question. A lot of people come to me really struggling with this concept. They often feel guilty for setting boundaries, or they're not sure about even what a boundary is. They've heard the term, set the boundary, things like that, but that's really confusing for them because it's not something that's well taught in our society nowadays, right? They know that boundaries are really important to having healthy, constructive, supportive, and wonderful relationships, but why? And oftentimes they also know that they feel like their boundaries are being violated, but they can't quite pinpoint what the boundary is that's being violated. That's why I've created the Clarifying and Creating Your Boundaries free PDF. You can find out what your boundaries are, how to tune in to what the boundary needs to be, and how to effectively create and communicate your boundary so that way you stay in this place that respects you, respects the other person, but also gives you the confidence in your boundaries so that way you stop being gaslighted, disrespected, and unseen. Having your boundaries really clear gives you a voice and also helps the other person stay in accountability with themselves. So that's not a role that you have to take on anymore. So if you are ready to really have clear boundaries, to really understand what your role is in the boundary, and to give yourself some safety and some protection against people that might try to gaslight you or are just being disrespectful, go grab my Creating and Clarifying Your Boundary PDF at erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. And while you're there, let's schedule a call with me. Come have a chat with me so that way I can really, really help you master this particular skill, creating boundaries, clarifying the boundary, communicating that boundary, and so that way I can also help you have relationships that show up to support you, cherish you, and love you.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. One of the coolest, I had this thought earlier, one of the coolest ways to start stepping into creative mode is just to observe, like you're saying, observe that inner victim. I think it's really cool. You brought up like the questions like, oh, why is nobody seeing me? Why am I so lonely? Why can't I get what I want? And what's interesting is like those are all technically questions. That's a question phrase, but it can be like a really easy small baby step towards creation is to actually take those and change the energy and do the actual question like, oh, why am I feeling lonely? Like it's totally different all of a sudden. Like
Mm-hmm.
why are people not seeing me? Maybe there's something I'm doing to block them, or it starts this process of like thinking differently.
It
I think
is.
that's a cool step.
It is. And that's actually one of the pillars too is ownership, right? And the antithesis of ownership is blame.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're sitting here in the blaming energy and the victim energy and things like that, it's a kind of this stuck energy. That's why that feels so lonely, is because we're stuck in a destructive energy, actually. Um, and the reason why we get irritated at other people is because they're also in that destructive energy. And so it's like compounding on you. And the way to get out of this is kind of like what Kyson's saying here is to change the question a little bit. Like, what is the loneliness trying to teach me? I don't have to agree with the way somebody else is treating me, but I'm looking at like all of my relationships right now, and they're all not supportive. They're all toxic. They're all abusive. But I'm the center of every single one of these relationships. I'm the common theme. So why is that? What is it that I am thinking? What is it that is in my mind that is attracting this to me? That doesn't mean that you're wrong. That doesn't mean you're bad. We're not or shooting on yourself or thinking, I shouldn't be thinking these things or I shouldn't be feeling these things. No, that's like trying to push away um, a T-Rex, right? The best way to get a T-Rex to stop trying to eat you is to grab its leg and hold on for dear life in a sense. But, you know, we want like we're not saying to accept the way someone else is treating you, but more or less check in. Check in with yourself and see and ask yourself, is there some way that I am showing up like this to myself? Am I like what's going on with my thoughts? How do I really think about myself? You would be like blown away when I ask like potential clients or even clients, how's your self-talk? Oh, it's great. And then in the next sentence, what's my problem? And it's like, and your self-talk is great, okay. Right?
Yeah, like there's I wonder what level beyond that they are avoiding, because they're like what it would look like to go beyond that. If that's great self-talk, there's that's just super interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting as I watch this and I'm like, okay, so what is good self-talk? Like, what do you say to yourself? The next question is do you actually believe it?
Hmm.
Okay? Because you can sit there and say, uh, you know, I'm confident, but then when an uncomfortable situation comes around or an uncomfortable conversation, you shut down. That's not confidence, right?
Right.
Um, or you can have confidence in one area, like, man, I'm really organized. I've got my house clean. My kids are fed. My kids are happy. And then you go and you look in the mirror and you see 200 pounds when you should, there's that word, be 130 pounds. And you're like, oh, I'm gross. Oh, I'm awful. Oh, right? At some point, at some level, loneliness really, I feel, and that's actually like one of these questions, like what is loneliness trying to get you to pay attention to? And I always think it's something about what you think, like what your self-talk is and what you think you actually deserve. Because if you think you deserve to be shamed by yourself and that, oh, I'm awful, oh, I'm ugly today, without like really appreciating the gray hairs and the extra pounds, and this is all part of me. This is all something to love. This is all something that just excites me. It doesn't mean I want to stay 200 pounds. I definitely want to get back down to that 130 because that's what's healthy for me. But it's not because I want to look a certain way for someone else. It's because it feels good. That's what feels good. That's where I feel like I could rest. I'd be happier there. You know, I would be able to do more of the things that I want to do with my life. If I was 130 pounds, that's a whole other different ball game than saying I need to be 130 pounds so my husband doesn't look at porn. That doesn't work. So I feel like if somebody is lonely, it says something about the way you are talking to yourself. And if you're blaming someone, one of the things that you're actually telling yourself if you're in blame is I have no power here. And that's a negative self-talk. And I don't think a lot of people really understand or realize that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I love the idea that loneliness, like if you think of it this way, I think, or like, I love your idea that loneliness is trying to get you to see something. It's an invitation. I also love to think of it as like part of the system that God built into us. Our body and spirit interact. However life flows, that's one of the possible emotions that we have as an ability. And I love the idea of saying like, whoa, maybe I could be thankful for my loneliness, just like I'm thankful for the check engine light on my car that lets me know like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, there's something up. Um, like thank you to I'm thinking back through some of my personal journey. It's like, okay, at times when I felt lonely, as I've as I chose to be accountable and to ask questions and to learn, I found a lot of self-betrayal for sure, places where I
Yeah,
would betray myself.
same
The
here.
other huge one I found is like this incredibly deep pattern of trying to save everybody.
Yeah, that's another one. I think you're spot on there. Yeah.
And like what a lonely, think of, we know this. I mean, this is in the superhero movies. You got Superman, Batman, whoever. There's always this common theme of the hero feeling lonely because they're trying to save everyone. It ends up messing up with all their relationships. They have no one that really sees who they are, not to mention the mask that's covering their face. And then they're lonely and sad, and their life isn't fulfilling because they're putting themselves on a different plane than everybody. And
Hmm.
so, anyway, I'm just incredibly grateful for that awareness of the loneliness and the opportunity to get to face myself in those
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, and this isn't like a judgment on people who feel lonely. Like, no, this is actually us being like, we get it. I mean, I know just not too long ago, I was feeling pretty darn lonely. And as I got looking behind the loneliness, I saw some self-betrayal actually in there. And I saw some negative self-talk and some other things. And I think the difference here is just that, the reason why we understand this so well and the reason why we can talk to this is when we've experienced this at a very deep level, Kyson and I, but we've also been willing to do the self check-in, and realizing that we actually have a lot more power inside ourselves than outside of ourselves. We can influence other people, but we cannot actually control their actions and decisions. However, this person, ourself, we can totally control our actions and decisions. And that's power. That says something. That creates results and the results that we're looking for. And so when we say, like, you know, what is it trying to get you to pay attention to? we don't want to like have you sit in this loneliness and 1 second longer. It doesn't feel good. It's awful. What we do want you to do is gain some self-awareness, because one of the loneliest places you can be is in self-betrayal. And that's where we're talking. And if somebody is betraying you and that feels lonely, I would invite you to check in and see if there's some sort of truth that you have taken on there. Like, my husband is looking at porn, therefore I must not be beautiful or desirable. Do you see how, like, that's what I'm talking about? You're taking the actions of someone else and taking on a lie as truth, and that also creates loneliness.
Totally.
So, now that we've kind of, really explored loneliness, what it is, what it's trying to get us to pay attention to, and what it's trying to say, what do we do about it? Like, how do we start to actually create relationships where we can trust, feel safe, and connected and seen again?
And I feel like I want to like take 20 breaths and just feel through that question. Like, it's such a big question. We've talked about this idea of like setting your sights on what you do want to create, right? So instead of, oh no, I don't want to feel lonely. Okay, but what do you want to feel? What do you desire to feel and experience? And one of the, just for like, I love the overarching, like the eternal perspective. That's always been really powerful for me. And I think of the oneness that we talk about with Zion, being of one heart and one mind. And realizing that the connection isn't just something that I hope I could have or that I want, but it also, in addition to that, it is like one of the great journeys of humanity, is to all become one, to have this beautiful, deep connection where we're one and we're aligned with truth. We're one and we're aligned with love. And I'm just having this connection that, like, I think when you are trying to live according to people's expectations, especially in a relationship, it's kind of a false version of oneness. It's oneness through sacrificing of self. It's oneness through like giving up the good parts of you. It's almost like I'm going to become one with this person that expects me to change, instead of oneness with Christ, where we all come together in Christ. It's sort of this fearful version of, it's a scarce version of oneness. And so I'm just thinking of that as a cool context piece or perspective for like, when you build relationships, how can I create oneness and connection that's aligned with truth and with Christ?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I was going to say too is, like, I loved how at the beginning of this you were saying, what do you want? And so you might say connected. I want to feel safe. I want to feel trustworthy. I want to feel seen. Like, these are all things that, I've had women say to me, and I'm pretty sure you've said that you've heard men say these things too, right? Because, what's underneath pornography, it's some sort of betrayal trauma, to be honest with you, right? Yeah. But what does connected mean to you? What does trust mean to you? What does feeling safe? What does feeling seen look like? What does feeling appreciated look like? Like, write these things down and ask yourself these questions, like, what does this actually feel like? What does it look like? What does that mean to me? Because once you get this kind of clarity, now you can start checking off some boxes. You can start saying things like, I want to feel connected. Well, connected means that people understand me quickly. They don't judge me. They say kind things. They give me compliments, which I receive. You can look into this connected thing. Like to me, connected means listening, right? Like, I've got somebody that listens to me, that helps me work through like the stuff that comes up in life. But they don't do it with judgment. Like, they do it without judgment. They do it with kindness, love, patience, but they also do it with a little bit of a kick butt attitude, because sometimes I just want to stay stuck in my victim mentality, and they're like, okay, Aaron, come on, let's get with the program. Pull up your big girl panties, wipe your nose, let's move on, right? Those are people that I feel the most connected to. But now I have to ask myself the next question: am I giving myself that same relationship, that same opportunity? Am I listening to myself? Am I checking in with myself? Am I asking myself good questions so that way I can really understand what's going on with me? And am I sometimes kicking myself in the butt and saying, girl, you're just stuck in victim mode and you know it. And you just want to stay stuck in victim mode because finally somebody might give you attention, but you know that's out of alignment with who you are. So let's find the thing that is actually true. Like, you got to ask yourself, are you really giving yourself the relationships that you're desiring from someone else? Or is the relationship with yourself a lonely one? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like how we switched over to like, let's talk about relationships. And then it's like, but actually it's back to self. Like, what's going on in my relationship with myself? I think so many of the things you talked about are first created or at least initiated within yourself. Like safety starts with you. No one can actually take away your safety, uh, emotionally. Physically is maybe a little bit of a different question, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there is that thing, but on the deepest level of your soul, like no one can hurt you, um, on an eternal level without your permission. Maybe we say it
Exactly.
that way. And
Yeah.
so you create these things within yourself, and then ideally you'll start to, you create safety space for yourself. You listen to yourself, compassion for yourself, and then ideally you can like feel that connection with God as well and kind of create that, because God will always show up in those spaces with you.
Yeah. You're right.
And then I think it's about, okay, who else do I want in my space now? Who do I desire to
Mm-hmm.
spend time with? Who do I desire to create with? And everyone listening is going to be in a different stage. You've got husbands that are still in total, like, maybe power hungry, not willing to look at their stuff mode. Or you've got husbands that are, I talk to a lot of couples where like the husband and wife are both actively trying to figure out the pornography problem. They're both actively trying to create more communication, all that stuff. So if you're in, whatever space you're in, you get to look at, what do I desire? I'm going to create
Yeah.
safety for myself. And then from here forward, what do I desire to create?
Yeah. I love that. And one other thing you mentioned, you know, figuring out like how, like what relationships now actually start matching with you. And to me, totally heard like boundaries, because another thing with loneliness, another reason why that can show up is because we haven't set really good boundaries in place. And, you know, I think about like some of my past clients and stuff and how terrified they were to set boundaries, or how they might not have known how to set boundaries and stuff. Well, the best way to learn how to set boundaries is, again, coming back in and checking with yourself and finding out how you are out of line with being your own best friend. Because when you're out of line, you can start now checking in and saying, okay, I need to be kinder to myself when I muck things up, or when the house is a mess, or when I'm an extra 200 pounds, when I'm not where I want to be, or I'm placing all these expectations on me. I'm going to stop putting expectations on me. I'm going to live in intention, right? I mean, I talked about that boundary a while ago too in one of the episodes. Once you have boundaries with yourself, then you can actually start to recognize the boundaries that you want to create with other people. You know, saying things like, that is your expectation, but that does not work for me. So one thing that I hear women come to me all the time is my husband, I just barely had a baby like 2 weeks ago, and my husband is pressuring me for sex. Or I
2 weeks, huh?
yeah, I actually hear that a lot. You'd be surprised. Like it's like next day or the day of sometimes, and she's like, "Dude, get off of me," right?
I feel like most
And
doctors now are like, you gotta wait 6 weeks, but
yeah,
that's so
let's
interesting.
give it the 6 weeks. You have a giant wound inside of yourself. Let's give it some 6 weeks to heal, right?
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes it just is not vibing, right? But the expectation of sex, that is one that is a big boundary killer. But
Hmm.
yet women feel like they have to give that in order so husband doesn't go look at porn, but then he turns around and goes and looks at porn. Or I've had women say, we just barely had sex and he turned over, got on his phone, started looking at porn. And it's like, yeah, that's a bit of a slap in the face. But here's the deal. If you're trying to live by somebody else's expectation, you do not have a boundary in place there. That is where you need a boundary. And it's okay to say, I can tell and I appreciate that you find me sexy and that you would like to do this, but I am not feeling it.
Yeah.
It is okay to turn that down. And even though he may go look at porn, he may blame you, he may XYZ, like you can fill in the sentence here with whatever you feel like your husband could or may or may not do. Living by someone else's expectations and even putting expectations on yourself is not okay. Now, I can almost hear somebody say, but what about expecting your husband to be, um, you know, fidelity? I'm honest
Faith.
and what chaste? What is it like? True to you, right?
Yeah, faithful.
Faithful.
Yeah.
You can expect that, right? And you know what? I've got to say, it's still more powerful to live in intention.
Hmm.
Because intention is where you look at yourself and you're like, this is the way I am going to live. This is the way I choose to live. And anything that does not align with that, I get to now choose what I'm going to do with it. So if your husband is out sleeping with prostitutes, if you're living in intention, you can say, that doesn't work for me. So it looks like he is not sleeping in my bed, and it might look like a divorce, honestly. Now, that's not something I want to encourage anybody to do, but you've also got to take a look at your physical safety. Somebody that's sleeping around with prostitutes is not a physically safe person, right? They're just not. Living in intention means you get to make decisions and you feel peaceful about those decisions, which is far more powerful than expecting your husband to be honest and chaste with you. Should he be that way? Absolutely. Absolutely. But expecting him to be that way, I feel like causes you to be in a state of hypervigilance, and from that hypervigilance, a great deal of loneliness because now you're feeling like you're having to build the entire like pull the entire burden on yourself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I think a fun little side test to just check on like how it feels different to be in expectation or need or should or intention. I always love thinking of the example from the Book of Mormon, Second Nephi. I think First Nephi, where the angel appears and is like going to give him the vision of the tree of life, and the angel says like, Nephi, what desirest thou? Just for fun, like imagine that angel appeared and was like, Nephi, what do you expect from me? Like you just feel the different, or like Nephi, what do you need? Nephi, what should I do? And it's like
Yes,
it's just not nearly as powerful as showing up with like, hello, what do you desire? It's so powerful to choose into desire.
desire. And and that's for those of you that aren't Latter-day Saints, like Kyson and I are, uh, that's also splattered all over in the Bible and the New Testament too, this idea of what is it that you desire.
Mhm.
So when we're stuck in expectation, all of a sudden our desires go poof out the window. When we're stuck, well, not stuck, I don't want to say stuck, but when we're living in intention, now we're creating with God and we're able to finally have a place of joy, excitement, proud of oneself, making great, awesome decisions. And when we totally muck it up, we easily forgive ourselves and we realize that that didn't work, right? Okay, cool, on to the next thing, right? And we tend to really come into ourselves in intention, which is fabulous, which is such a beautiful place to be. So, uh, to wrap things up here, Kyson, what do you see with your clients? Like, we've kind of talked a little bit about like the woman and like the expectations. Like, what kind of expectations do you feel like you help your clients through, and like what are some of the ahas that come to their minds?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm thinking of like I'm bridging like expectations and loneliness, kind of that whole thought altogether. Like, I think a lot of times there's this, I'm thinking like when someone's using pornography, there's usually, especially this would be like maybe pre-marriage, the attitude or the fear is like, I'm afraid of even getting close to someone. I'm afraid I can't create that. I'm afraid that if someone sees the whole me, they will reject me. So it's going to be easier to just look at pornography and feel the gimmick version or the feel that sensation of closeness for a short time. And then I think during, like, if you are married already, a lot of times there is still a lack of connection and closeness. Loneliness is a
Yeah.
huge motivator for pornography, where like it's crazy that it's this simple, but a lot of times it's like I'm afraid to have a conversation with my wife about my emotions. Like I'm afraid that I can't be myself in my emotions or my thoughts, or I can't like share what's actually in my heart. And that the fear of that conversation turns to loneliness, turns to disconnectedness, turns to crippling. Like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm just going to escape it, and then boom, you turn to pornography. So I think it totally ties in there, like the loneliness factor, and then I guess to talk to expectation for a second. I think it's like we already talked about expectations around sex, but like that's the big one I'm thinking of is there's kind of this perpetuated lie that men have sexual needs, right? We have more
Mm-hmm.
needs than women or sexual needs in the first place. I honestly think that's a totally made up
I
thing.
agree.
To have sexual needs, firstly, we know it's more powerful to own it as a desire. Like, what wife is wanting to hear, like, hey, I really need sex tonight? You know what I mean? Like, I can't
Aw.
control myself and I am feeling lonely and sad and depressed and I don't know how to deal with it. I need sex. Comparing that with like, I would love to create an experience with you. I like think how talk about like true romance, the desire of like, I would
Yeah.
love to just like be close to you. I would love to share. I want to like tell you how I'm really feeling, or let's like let's just be close tonight. You know what I mean? That's so different than I have a need that I can't figure out how to meet. I expect you to fix
Yeah,
that for me.
I have a scratch that I can't itch, right? It's a whole other thing. And,
Yeah.
and even women, I feel like sometimes they're the higher desire partner and they get a little bit that way. And husband's like, oh my gosh, woman, cool your jets, right? And I agree with you completely there. Like, nobody wants to feel like they are responsible for someone else's happiness
Mm.
and someone else's behavior and someone else's choices. That's not a good place to be in. And so when we decide that we desire to be responsible for ourselves and our own lives, like the lie is that is lonely, and it's easy to believe that. But the truth of the matter is that is like the least lonely place in the entire world. Because now you don't feel disconnected from yourself. You don't feel disconnected from the Lord. You don't feel disconnected from your spouse. And you guys, like Kyson and I have been working together for almost a year now. Oh my gosh. Like, oh my gosh, almost a year. Okay. That realization just barely hit me.
Yeah, I was like, I honestly had no good guess. Like
Yeah,
2 4 years, 1 year.
it's a year. It's a year. We met each other in June. And the thing is, you know, we have seen each other like have some low moments, have some lonely moments. We've worked with each other through those low moments and brought each other back up. The thing is when you're dedicated to yourself and your desires and living for the truth that lives inside of you, to make you feel like a fantastic human, to get you your confidence back, that is not a lonely place at all. That is, in truth, probably the most connected place I've ever been. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like I have so much energy all the time. There are still times where things royally suck for me. And you know this, Kyson. Like, you probably know a lot about what happens in the walls of my home, right? But I do genuinely feel like I have a support system. I've got you, I've got Kushla, I've got Daniel, I've got all of these guest speakers that come onto my podcast are part of my support system. I've had people where I've asked, I was like, hey, you want to come on and be a guest? I feel like you've got a fantastic message. And they never get back to me. And I just know, okay, cool. Those people are not part of my support system. And this is how we know is when we support ourselves first and we realize that that is actually the most connected we can possibly be. We start to find people in our sphere or teach people who are in our sphere how connectedness truly looks. And we can find people that are going to support more and more and more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I really like what you're saying. I love the simplicity of like, I like that we started with the questions. We've kind of talked through a bunch of the branches of loneliness and then the simple version of what you're saying. It's not like kind of synthesizing what you just said. If you are feeling lonely, then take some accountability for what you're feeling, start to observe, and then just ask yourself, what do I desire? And like start to practice creating. And I love how, there's that's the simple version, just like, okay, take accountability, start creating. And then what's cool is the more complex, exciting stuff like that will start to drip into the other parts of your life, right? It's going to change the way you show up in your relationships. It's going to change, everything from your sex life, your money life, your, church life, whatever it is, will be changed as you start showing up for you. And it's weird that that's counterintuitive. I think we sometimes culturally think you're supposed to not do that for some reason, but this feels like a cool, this is like a cool kind of a wake up call or accountability moment for me too, to just be like, okay, I'm committing to show up for me, and then also to show up for other people where it feels like a win.
Yeah, love it. I love it. I love it. All right, Kyson. Well, I think that was a great episode. Like a lot of good nuggets unfolded there. Listeners, I totally would invite you to go check out Kyson's podcast, the Kyson Kidd Podcast, where he talks a lot about this kind of stuff too. Um, and give a shout out to like somebody that you know could use it. Like, hey, here's a podcast for you. Go check it out.
Totally, yeah.
Right?
It's the Kyson Kidd podcast, so easy to remember, easy-ish.
Yeah, easy-ish, easiest. Well, and we can put it in the description notes too, which I will do. Anything else that like any last thoughts, any wrapping up thoughts that you have there for us, Kyson?
I'm just feeling excited. Like I love that loneliness is something that's within our sphere of influence instead of like, oh, just poor lonely people out there, we don't know what to do. I love the idea of taking accountability, stepping into your power. And I also love the idea of like, I'm seeing in my mind the ripple effect. If everyone that listens to this
Yeah.
podcast chooses to step into that power and responsibility, what impact that would have on spouses and children and friends, like just to see the change that happens in someone when they show up for themselves. It's pretty cool.
It is. And I've seen the change personally. Like, if I've got two teenagers, almost a third, right? And to see the level of accountability that my teenagers take, and that's a hard time to be in an accountable space. But I feel like I've got to take a little bit of credit for some of this because of my extreme ownership. And even I'm like totally extreme ownership and bouncing back and doing these pillars, there's still times where I go into the antithesis, right? It happens. But I see my kids taking extreme ownership too. And what a great life for them. I'm glad because if they continue to take extreme ownership, they're going to have one heck of a successful future. And who does not want that for their loved ones? And it starts with doing it ourselves.
That's beautiful.
So,
love it.
All right, my loves. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Let's see, what is coming up next week? This is going to be a good one. My husband has been looking at porn. Now what? So maybe we'll get Kyson back for that one. So I don't know. You want to come do a double episode with me?
Oh yeah, that sounds fun.
I know. I was like, this is like a Kyson jam too on that one. My husband's looking at porn. Now what? So we'll get a double episode with Kyson on that one because I feel like it's going to be good to dive into the mind of the husband a little bit on that one. So,
sweet.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, so I've got a question for you. Have you joined my free Facebook group or Instagram page yet? If you haven't, go and do that. And this is the reason why. I always post my freebies, updated information, and all kinds of goodies for my community in that page. I'm also really active. I post videos. I answer questions. So if you guys really, really want to get in and interact with me, go like me on Facebook, go join my group, The Other Side of the Struggle, Healing from Betrayal Trauma. Come find me on Instagram, Erin Anderson, Betrayal Trauma Coach, and come follow me, because I always have something good there just for you, my audience, and I love connecting with you there. I also post anytime that I have groups going on. I talk sometimes about my programs. So if you guys are interested in working with me, or even just following me and getting as much free content as you possibly can, go hang out in my group. Go connect with the ladies that are there. Also come and join Immune and Unashamed for those married couples that are following me, because in that group, me and my business partner, Kyson Kidd, are also talking and offering some great content in there. So go join up. I hope to see you on the other side of the struggle. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today and listening in on this podcasting episode. Don't forget to tune in next week. It's gonna be awesome.